Hey everybody, welcome back to Atlanta. We are in downtown Atlanta, fresh off of a visit to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We have a Roosters Report. We have insight from the Ohio State defensive players and 15 minutes of super exciting practice with the Buckeyes.
Sweet, sweet visuals.
3 special teams periods. I'm sure that's the normal schedule.
Yeah, the Buckeyes generally start every practice with special teams, and this one was no different. And now we're going to kick it over to Austin with weather.
Okay, yeah, so we've, again, tried to make the best of a new and different set from yesterday. I took this out of the main press conference room so that we could really spice it up. I didn't want to use the same pillow.
I think what's shocking, because this event is being put on by the city of Atlanta, and their signage all over like downtown, but not in the actual hotel where everything is taking place. So we're just doing the best we can. It's a beautiful sign. We're going to stuff that in the car and take it home.
That's why we drove.
And they can't really tell us no, because we're the media and we can do whatever we want. But no, we can stop fiddling now and dive in, right? The biggest, the most important thing of the day, obviously for Ohio State, was not the hour of press conference conversation we had with the defense. It's that Miyan Williams was not at practice for the Buckeyes. Missed his appearance in the press conference on Tuesday, and we were told at the time he was a little bit under the weather and wasn't feeling well. I guess today would be confirmation that he's still not feeling well.
Yep, I was told the same thing. I asked about that. What's going on there? Still under the weather. Ronnie Hickman had also been dealing with a little bit of illness, but he was on the practice field. He was supposed to appear with the media on Wednesday morning, did not, but he was participating in practice. Miyan Williams appeared to be the only absence for the Buckeyes. We did see him. Berman and I saw him, spoke with him on Monday night.
Yeah.
He was down here with he's down here with the Buckeyes. Everybody is saying that the ankle is fine. How quickly does he feel like himself coming out of whatever bug he's got? I know people asked on OhioState.Rivals.com on the boards, like, is this a concern that it goes through the entire team? I did ask about that. Nobody else is reporting, any symptoms like that for Ohio State at this point. But Miyan Williams did not participate in practice today.
So crappy luck Miyan Williams has. I mean, if you think back to the 2020 playoff, he is expected to be sort of, or the 2019 playoff. He plays against Clemson, kind of pops onto the scene. 2020 gets COVID for the national championship game, and then it's just bad luck. Hopefully, but again, we're not hearing like it's
doesn't mean that he's not going to be ready by Saturday.
Right.
It's still Wednesday.
It's not ideal to miss Tuesday, Wednesday practice if we can assume he missed yesterday, based on the fact that he wasn't there today and he missed on yesterday morning's availability. So that's not great for a guy coming off of a month-long ankle injury. But as far as just the way that he was moving on Monday, there was no issues. Everyone said he's fine with the foot. So that's sort of the news du jour, I guess, the big picture.
Yeah, so we expect that Miyan Williams will still be, able to go in some capacity by Saturday. If not, what we saw from 3 periods of open practice was Dallin Hayden leading the line for the running backs. That's maybe reading too much into it. Maybe it's notable. Who knows? Sometimes it is.
Yeah.
Chip Trayanum was taking the second. They weren't live reps. They were just going through the line. Those aren't generally decided haphazardly or in random fashion. I'm sure that some people were excited by that possibility because many wondered why Dallin Hayden barely touched the football against Michigan last month. So we'll see how that transpires. Miyan Williams, I find it highly unlikely that he would miss any part of playing on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be out there, but it's pretty much what we said on Tuesday on the Roosters Report, which is it's likely to be running back by committee anyhow heading into this game because Miyan is going to be probably needing a little bit of a recharge after not playing in the last month and not really doing much. And then you got Chip, who is obviously the team seems to be excited about him playing there, and he did a nice job against Michigan, but Dallin has earned that opportunity as well. So I'd expect that all 3 of them will play anyway. I do think it's interesting that Chip was behind Dallin in the line today because Chip's the guy we got yesterday instead of, I don't know, anyone else like Kate Stover or Matthew Jones or, Donovan Jackson or someone else, as opposed to putting a player out at a position that's sort of been a hot button point.
You are supposed to bring starters to the offensive media day and the defensive media day. So, again, we're having to read into press conference appearances and 15 minutes of open workouts. Because that's what we do.
Yeah.
That's why we're here, to try and get as much information as we can. Probably got more insight on that on Monday night than we did on Wednesday morning, but that's the way it goes as well. Matthew Jones, he was a full participant on Wednesday morning, heavily taped on that right ankle. I think that's notable what he had been dealing with for the rest of the season, and Kevin Wilson shed some light on this as well on Tuesday. That was a foot problem. What he picked up at Maryland is an ankle issue. You could see all that tape on there for him on Wednesday morning at practice, but he was going through all the drills as normal. So I think from that perspective, we can stop talking about the offensive line and contingency plans. Looks like everything is full steam ahead there for Ohio State up front, and really the rest of the team present and accounted for.
Yeah, I mean, as we said earlier, like this is as good and as healthy as Ohio State has been since the start of the season. So you certainly are encouraged by that if you're Ohio State. But the question is going to be, how do they rotate? How do they move things around? I expect that we'll still see Josh Fryer play on Saturday because, as we've talked about with Bill on the other shows that we've been doing in the last month, I think that you'll see Ohio State run 6 offensive linemen out there at times to try to get an advantage against the Georgia defensive line. That's obviously big. That was sort of the question mark today was, how do these guys play? We saw Jack Sawyer this morning, and again, because you're supposed to bring starters to this, we expect Jack will play a lot as he has all year. But how does Ohio State rotate everyone else? How do they attack the Georgia offense? And that was sort of the primary conversation today is how do you defend a team that deploys 3 tight ends the way they do? Ohio State players were asked, like, who does Georgia remind you of? And they think they're like Penn State, I guess. Like they don't. There isn't really a comparison because a comparison? There's not really a comp here because what they do is so unique when it comes to deploying the tight ends all together.
I think Jack Sawyer gave the best answer I've heard on that throughout this week because it's come up a lot. I think it's mainly the Georgia beat wants to force a comparison to Michigan.
Yeah. Because
Michigan, I mean, maybe not because of it, Michigan had success, as we know, in the second half of that game. And I think that they're looking at that and saying, well, Georgia is built similarly. Maybe they'll have the same success on Saturday. But so there were 2 different ways of attacking that Jack Sawyer, I think, addressed directly. One, they don't really think that Georgia is like Michigan.
Yeah.
And part of that is because they think Georgia is much better than Michigan. And another part of that is that they feel like they were really successful, especially in the first half defensively. Again, set aside the explosives. I know you shouldn't, you don't want to, you don't want to discount it happened. And then they don't really view that fourth quarter as anything more than a bit of an aberration where the game, again, it was an explosive. They look at the rest of it, the toughness they showed, the ability to shut down the run in the first half and say they think that they felt pretty good about what they were doing defensively. They were not pushed around, they were not bullied, and they let one tackle slip away and one eye control, as Lathan Ransom said when it was talking about the deep shots there. Those happened, but in terms of matching up personnel and going toe-to-toe against Georgia, they're not intimidated by that, and they don't necessarily see it as a like-for-like comp comparison with Michigan.
Well, especially because if you're talking about the running game in general, Georgia has good running backs, and Kendall Milton is a good running back. Kenny McIntosh is good. They don't have the explosion that Donovan Edwards has and the ability to really go 75 in the blink of an eye. So in that area, I'd actually give the advantage to Michigan. I think Georgia, and this is what we were talking about today, is the Georgia offensive line is probably a little bit more athletic than Michigan's. Not maybe as cohesive, don't always play. Michigan does a great job up front and is able to kind of work as one unit, where Georgia is actually rotating tackles at times to try to keep guys in the program more so than keeping them fresh, because they want all these guys to play. They've done a great job, recruiting these positions, so they want to make sure these guys don't transfer. But there is a different level of, I think, preparation that you have to get to, because Georgia is weird in the way that they attack defenses. It's a little bit of Stetson Bennett scrambling around like a crazy person. It's a little bit of the passing game to the running backs. It's a little bit of throwing the ball to the tight end or to the wide receivers, and then a lot of it of moving Brock Bowers around and finding ways to deploy him. Ohio State had, I think, Zach Herbstreit on the scout team is Brock Bowers, from what we could tell at practice, wearing the number 19 in red. I don't know that that's an apt comparison, but I also understand. I often wonder, how do they decide who? Let's say you're Ohio State, right? hypothetically.
Okay.
You have a guy like Sam Hart on your team, right?
Okay.
Who's the 5th tight end, who's 6'5", 230 pounds. Wouldn't it make more sense to have him being Brock Bowers in the scout team than Zach Herbstreit? Like,
I guess Sam Hart's a big part of the plan this week.
I mean, I'm confused by, like, at what point in the full roster do you be like, okay, this week you got to be scout, because I would think you'd get a much better appreciation if you're putting someone like Sam Hart out there.
Well,
Like on defense,
he's also not Brock Bowers, so
right, but he's the same size. He's athletic. I think that it's a better comp. But on defense, you had Kenyatta Jackson and Omari Abor, who was great to see him out there, like actually practicing.
Yeah.
There was some concern back in September he was going to be out for the year, and he's back practicing. And
Black stripe off.
And Hero Canoe, all those guys were out there on the scout team. So at least on the defensive line, offensive line, you're getting somewhat high-level talents that you're going against. It's not a knock on Zach Herbstreit. I'm just trying to figure out, like, why not take Sam Hart or Bennett Christian? Like, Bennett Christian's 6'6" and 255 pounds. Why don't you make those two into Bowers and Washington on the scout team?
You learned a lot more than I did, apparently, from the open viewing period.
You didn't see those things?
Well, I did, but like I didn't think about it in terms of it being a issue.
That's not an issue. I just think that, like, if you're playing to win the game, why would you not try to get as like to like as possible?
Yeah. Well, I think that's really the point. Like, Bowers and Darnell Washington
they're mutants. I get it.
Yeah.
But
I understand your point in the tangent.
why not have Devin Brown back out there as Stetson Bennett?
Well, you never know.
Help me out.
Come on, America, help him
That's
out.
all I'm asking for.
What did you make of the Jim Knowles press conference on Wednesday morning? I thought it was pretty entertaining.
Jim Knowles,
as it always is.
He's always great to listen to. I thought that, one of the things that's going to be taken away is he was asked pretty succinctly, like, did you think that the 5 plays against Michigan were the difference in the game? And he said, yes. Like, I'm not sure what answer you expect to get there, but also, like, what you could see there was a visible irritation from the Ohio State contingent here today that they are sick and tired of hearing about Michigan.
Yeah, they are.
Like, they're trying to play Georgia, and I can't count the number of times that say, I heard guys today say, the focus is on Georgia. We're focusing only on Georgia. Somebody asked him if they're going to be paying attention to the TCU Michigan game. And, like, no, like, we're going to be getting ready to play a game 5 hours later.
Yeah.
Like, we're not, like, it's just a weird obsession. And it's almost like people refuse to let it go. I get it, like, it sucks, and they lost the game that mattered, and you can tell it eats at them, but, like, they're here, and Jack Sawyer said it repeatedly today. They're here, and they deserve to be here. And the vibe that you can get from talking to these kids, just a moment, away, once they step off the stage, was they know that nobody thinks they belong here. And that is interesting to me for a team that, for 12 weeks of the season, was the clear-cut second-best team in the country. And
clear-cut top 2.
Right.
I don't...
Maybe even 1. Yeah, right. I mean, and now all of a sudden people think that the program is falling apart. And, somebody asked Jack and Tommy and Lathan about what the vibe is in Columbus, like how they're feeling.
There's a real clown down here covering the other team.
Yeah.
And the way he put it was, do you feel like you need to get your swagger back? Did you lose it? Like, they lost a game.
Yeah, it's so bizarre.
The players do not feel like the program has collapsed.
Yeah.
Steele Chambers got that question from this person and was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like,
well, that person probably didn't realize who they were asking that question to, because Steele is not someone to entertain folly. But it was weird. It was interesting to hear them basically say they have been forced in the last 4 weeks to almost turn off their fans and turn away from the fan base, because the fan base has been so overwhelmingly negative that I think that you can tell that there's a sense of, like, if Ohio State somehow wins this game and wins the national championship, which they certainly can, like, I almost get the sense that it's done biting their thumb at the fan base, because it's been so bad.
Bite my thumb at you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, that's an old expression, folks. Look it up.
So back to Jim Knowles. My question about that was not replay what happened against Michigan. Right. Which calls did you want back? It was forward looking, and I wrote about it last week at OhioState.Rivals.com, and like I feel strongly like there's people. How does he have to do a different? Can he not blitz as much? Can he not go cover zero? Did he get burned and you have to pull back? Like he's been doing this for such a long time, and I wanted to know how you manage that mentally as a coach. Like it's experience. You cannot just abandon the philosophy that you were hired to install, that you have made your identity as a play caller. You can't change the complete scheme in a month that you've been. Everyone was asking for updates all season long. What's the percentage? How much you got in? Like you can't scrap all that. You could say maybe there's been conversation about picking the spots and when to do this and when to do that, and that's fine. But he bristled at any notion. Like I didn't ask it, and it didn't have to be said. It's like we're not going to run a bend but don't break defense here. Like it's about stop rate. It's about trying to create turnovers, create chaos, generate pressure. And you're not going to be able to do that if you just sit back and get rid of everything else that has made his scheme great.
But he also did say that they've had a time in the last month to install some new stuff. So we will probably see some wrinkles we haven't seen all year, but not like anyone's going to tell us what they are. But, they do see, I think, a need to freshen it up a little bit and throw out some different looks at Georgia. And to do that, you're going to have to use your most athletic players and find ways to get matchups that are favorable. How do you defend a guy like Brock Bowers when no one has done it in his 2 years of college football? So you're going to have to come up with something different, and I'm excited to see what that is. But I thought the best part of today was Tommy Eichenberg being forced to talk for 40 minutes.
He's actually getting
he's getting better,
warmer. I would say.
But you could tell, I imagine in the back of his mind, he's thinking, this is supposed to be one of the most memorable weeks of his life, and he's being put in front of the media.
He's going to have to do it 3 times. He's going to be the only one, I think, that has to.
Yeah, well, he had to do it on the Zoom call on Monday. Yeah. He had to do it yesterday or today in this 40-minute session. And then he has the full team media day on Thursday that he has to be a part of. So
that part is hilarious.
I bet people aren't going to pick him tomorrow.
Nobody else had to do 3 media appearances. The least talkative player on the team is the one that got sacrificed at the media altar this week.
Yeah. Well, we don't know how tomorrow's set up. We don't know if it's going to be tables or if it's going to be everyone just sitting in a chair and you pick and talk to who you want.
We can break down what our work is going to be like tomorrow. But there are going to be tables on the outside. All the starters will have one. So I don't think Tommy Eichenberg will draw a big crowd.
Probably not.
I asked and got a look at the scars on the hand. He was in a good mood today. Yeah. I thought that was great. He doesn't think he's going to have to play with the cast anymore. He did start to talk a little bit about how that had limited the tackling late in the year. One was a broken bone. I think it was the left hand. It was his thumb that was broken, and on the right hand, index finger. I'm like, well, you don't need those to grip anything, do you? Right? Like that's pretty important. It seems like, but it's just like Cade. Obviously, the roommates. It's easy comparison. Wasn't going to make excuses for it, but it did limit his ability, and he still only missed 3 tackles. Yeah. It's not like it was a significant drop off, but it's another example, I think, and I've talked about it pretty much every day on the Roosters Report about the value of Ohio State being healthy, getting healthier, and the time off. They're going to look a lot different on Saturday night than they did on November 26th. That's just a fact.
I think that one thing that will be obvious early in the game on Saturday is that Georgia probably does not really know how fast Ohio State is. And there's always been this misconception that the Big Ten is slow or whatever. You'll see Ohio State at their freshest, and that will make a difference, I think, on Saturday as far as just what they're able to do defensively. Guys like Tommy Eichenberg they are much more athletic than they get credit for being. We talk so much about Georgia's front seven and how athletic those guys are, or Malachi Starks at corner, and what they can do. But Ohio State has some pretty freaky athletes as well. I mean, I saw a statistic that in the 4 teams in the playoff, Georgia has 15 5-stars on their roster. Ohio State has 14. TCU has 1, and Michigan has 3. So, these are the 2 most talented teams in the playoff. Mm-hmm. And if you get both these programs at their healthiest and ready to go, you're going to see some really special football on Saturday. And the more we talk to these guys, you can tell that they're really just sort of eager to get going and stop all of this stuff. They did not have to play basketball. last night. There was a broken hoop. So the basketball competition did not occur. So for everyone that was worried about that, myself included, crisis averted. Jack Sawyer did say he was mad that didn't get a chance to show off his shooting stroke, but I guess that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I bet it's not as good as it used to be now that he's up to like 270 pounds.
Yeah, probably a little stiff.
A little stiff. But again, maybe that would have been the challenge.
Yeah, so tomorrow we've got a full team media day where
We sure do.
we will probably spend a lot of our time trying to get some knowledge and insight on the younger players that we haven't had a chance to talk to most of the year.
Yep.
If there's anyone specifically out there, America, that you feel like we need to dive into,
To drill down.
let us know in the comments on YouTube, and we'll do our best to find out what's going on, get a pulse of the younger guys. What else are you looking forward to as far as whole team media day?
It always sticks in my mind, and we've talked about maybe what similarities exist between the 2014 run and that could happen in 2022. And to me, it was at the full team media day in the Superdome where I took full notice of the mentality difference between Ohio State and Alabama. And I don't know that this will be the case. I haven't spent a lot of time around Georgia, and I still won't on Thursday. But when Alabama came out, they were so tight. I had to they reminded me of what Ohio State was like the week of the Michigan game last month. And that's when I'm like, well, I think the pressure's getting to them a little bit. And I had already picked Ohio State, but I felt like, okay, well, maybe this has a much better shot than I thought, because they were so confident and they were carefree and loose. All those things you could tell, like they were happy to be there, and they felt like they knew a secret that nobody else knew yet. And I'll be interested to see. That's come through a little bit in the couple days of press conferences for Ohio State so far. But certainly when we saw them on Monday night at the College Football Hall of Fame, I got that same vibe. They have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
They're not going to reveal game plans or anything like that. But when I come back to the health of this team, again, outside of Miyan Williams working through the sickness right now, Ronnie Hickman again having that earlier in the week, but getting everybody back, how much they enjoy being around each other. I don't have anything specific that I want to ask tomorrow, really. It's the vibe, man. That's what I'm looking at.
Again, I keep going back to this idea that nobody else believes that Ohio State belongs here except for Ohio State. And that goes for a lot of Ohio State fans and certainly national media who are here writing stories about how Ohio State the program's falling apart and you don't have to win a national championship at Ohio State. It's just enough to try. Like, it's just weird stuff that I don't know where it comes from.
Great take there.
But I am curious to see if any Georgia players have a similar opinion. And not that they're going to say it directly. They're very well coached, and Kirby Smart's program is smart. They're not going to go out there and run their mouths. But it just seems like the Georgia media, and a lot of times I think you can sort of translate how the people covering a team act or feel is very much a byproduct of what they get from being around the team. And nobody that covers Georgia thinks Ohio State should be playing in this game or that they have any chance to win. And most of them seem to be thinking this is going to be a 3-touchdown win for Georgia. And I'm interested to see if any of that comes across, that Georgia is sort of crazy to say, like, looking past Ohio State and saying thinking that this game is going to be a clear-cut win, and I just don't feel that way. I don't know why anyone. I don't know how we've got to the point where people just believe Ohio State is a program that doesn't have good players, and that seems to be.
Well, you're not going to get that vibe from the Georgia coaching staff because they are very well aware of what the challenge is for them, and they'll have that opportunity to talk about that. I guess there'll. Not just for the full team with the players on Thursday, get a couple moments to talk to some coaches that we haven't got to hear from a lot this year, see what we can gather from that. We're going to do our best, as we always do, at ohiostate.rivals.com and on the podcast. This has been the Roosters Report as we get one day closer to New Year's Eve, Peach Bowl for Ohio State and Georgia. He's Berm. I'm Austin Ward. We're going to bid this set adieu.
Yeah, we put this in the car and go.
And we're going to. No, don't tell them that
we're not taking the sign.
We're definitely not doing that. We'll talk to you all tomorrow. See you, America.